And what?
This is what you do. You're like, and thank you very much for Shat on TV. This is Roger.
This is where I was going to put it.
But then you go, oh, and by the way, come back to the store and buy, and you just keep. It's like
I'm editing.
It's like a death spiral.
I know. All right. Well, listen. I edit the River Rants.
Hello, I'm David Heyman, and I play Brace on the TV show Taboo. And you're listening to the Shat on TV podcast with Roger, Gene, and Big D.
Welcome back to Shat on TV Taboo Edition, the unofficial podcast companion piece to the hit FX and BBC One series Taboo. I am one of your hosts, Roger Roper, and alongside me are my two co-hosts, Big D Dick Ebert.
Good evening.
And Gene Lyons.
No sparks, no flames, no inflammatory comments.
And this is our fan email episode where we look back on this week's episode of Taboo and provide our feedback on the top listener emails for the week. This week's episode was the finale of season 1. You've spent an hour listening to our ideas on Tuesday's Deep Dive. Now it's our turn to hear from you. Gene, we received a lot of really good reviews and emails from the audience this week.
You know, typically people talk about the episode alone. This one was these broad, really well thought out ideas on the entire season and how things developed. I was very, very impressed. This is a very literary audience, and they're really looking at character development, plot development, really smart stuff this week.
Yeah, so for those of you who've never listened to our River Rants episode, what took you so long? This will be our final River Rants of the season. So we jam-packed in the top 13 because I thought 13 was kind of a spooky number. It was kind of a spooky series all season. So what we'll do is we'll read and respond. Sometimes we may not read the entire email. We truncate it for space or for content. However, you can go to our website, shatontv.com, click on the River Rants section of Taboo FX, and read all the emails that we receive in their entirety. You can join the conversation by clicking on the comments folder. You can also join the conversation on our social media outlets. We're on Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram, and Facebook. Just search for Shat on TV. That being said, we've got a lot of good content I want to get into. Big D, take us to the river. All right, our first email River Rant comes in from Gary. Gary writes, "Hi guys, we watched the final episode of Taboo on Saturday. Very good, even with the large number of plot threads to resolve. I think they did a very good job overall with the series, perhaps taking the idea from Westworld that season one is a little more than set up for the story proper to be started in season 2. I'm a little unclear on how Delaney managed to manipulate everyone to get himself out of the tower, but apart from that, I think it was a very satisfying resolution to the series as a whole. With a reasonable season 2 setup, if they get renewed, I'm glad they didn't go down the Revenant path to explain Delaney. I think in the greater context of the series, that would have been a step too far. Regards, and of course that comes from Gary overseas. Guys, what do you think about Gary's email?
Well, with regards to how he got out of the tower, I mean, I think that it was a bit far-fetched, but if everything went exactly as planned, it kind of makes sense, right? It did seem a bit abrupt, though, that it was, you know, if the Crown wanted to keep him in there and they seemed so hell-bent on killing him afterward, you would have thought that prior to letting him out, maybe Coop would have gone and talked to the Prince Regent and been like, should we let this guy go? That part seems a little weird to me. I'm glad you pointed out, Gary, because that was nagging at me for the last week.
I think what the show lacked in maybe giving us some clear resolve, and whether you believe his plan was far-fetched and really took a lot of luck and faith to come to fruition, it made up for in being fun. Upon subsequent watches, I think I enjoyed the swashbuckling and the action, and it was an enjoyable hour of TV. And sitting on Twitter, watching the feed go as the American episode aired, it seemed like people as a whole, other than Zilpha being shortchanged as a character and, kind of being dispensed without any fanfare or the respect she deserved, people seemed to like it. And upon subsequent watch, I thought it was fun.
Yeah, Gary, I think we all kind of share in your same sentiment as a consensus. If you listen to our deep dive, it was an enjoyable episode 8, but from a season perspective, there were maybe some slight changes, maybe a little bit more swashbuckling would have been better. Thank you so much for the email. The next River Rant email comes in from Anne. Anne writes in, I thought the show started out promising a gritty mystery gothic tale. However, I think it lost or didn't have enough plot to be truly a great drama. I knew somehow James Delaney was going to escape as he manages to beat death and everything else that is thrown at him. Here are my gripes. Number 1, I'm not sure why he sent the bomb to Strange. Wouldn't a court case be more of a punishment? Number 2, how does Delaney find the strength and time to turn Dumbarton into a creation worth of Hannibal Lecter? Number 3, Super Robert, the little kid, manages to get all the letters delivered in enough time to secure coaches and chemist weapons, etc. And finally, Strange lets James bully him into giving him a ship. Where's the suspense? Nobody says no to him, and nothing can kill him, not a bang on the head, torture, etc. Now, as a designer, however, I did love the sets, costumes, and handwriting. Attached here is a picture of Zilpha's letter, which is different than what is being spoken. I'm not sure if that's of significance. However, I thought Zilpha's character was sorely underdeveloped and her watery exit a predictable move. James Delaney is more worried that she's not singing to him instead of feeling remorse that he drove her to death instead of leaving her alone. And again, that comes from Anne. So Anne has some critical points that she's written out here. Gene.
All right, I'll take the first one. Why send a bomb to Strange? I think we've established that the EIC is capable of weaseling its way out of a lot of things. Strange, no doubt, has a pretty strong legal team and would be able to fight this or strike a deal with the Crown or whatever. This is the surefire way, no pun intended, to make sure that he is ended. And then you've also got Chichester as a backup, in case he does somehow, the bomb doesn't go off or somehow he escapes it. So I think, the bomb to Strange is, there's one way to make sure you get retribution. That's to make sure he's dead.
Big issue I have. James is the main protagonist of the series. After 8 episodes in a full season run, we can't even answer what was his main motivation. And that's a problem. If you're watching Breaking Bad, you understand why Walt is doing it. What are his motivators? What's his dilemma? What demons is he fighting with? We still don't even know what James' main objective was, and that's a problem. If they did put it on screen and we missed it, that's another failing on their half. But was it enjoyable? Yes. Could it have been done better? I still don't buy one of the points you brought up there was Robert finding, especially Cholmondeley, in some brothel. Please, if you told me you have 2 hours to go find Gene and Roger and give them a note, shit, we're in trouble. I'm staying in the tower because there's no way I'm finding them.
I think it would have been more convincing with a more inspiring montage soundtrack, right? So, they were doing the regular Taboo movie. If you did, I Need a Hero or something like that, then I'd be like, okay.
You have to put one foot
in front of the
other. Yeah, then he would have found him. Yeah.
Now, and Big D, you pointed out to me after we watched the scene where Dumbarton gets slung up, and goes full Blue Man Group. How did he get him up there? He's one man. How do you string another man up in the air?
Well, I mean, there were rafters on the roof, right? And so if you basic elementary physics would dictate that you could throw a rope and pulley system.
Hold on.
You could use. I mean, he's a strong guy.
Listen, this isn't fucking Cirque du Soleil, okay? You have the Crown and the East India coming down on you. You have a small window of time, but yet you want him to independently tie a rope to 4 corners of the room, then deadlift. Yeah, okay, James is strong. But to pick up that dead weight by yourself, and not only the aesthetics, you have to dye his face, put the note on his chest. Yeah. You need at least 3 people and an hour and a half to do that.
All right, I got one thing to say to you guys. Man in Black and El Lazo.
No, I thought the exact same thing. But that was only one rope. You didn't ask him to kind of quarter him and spread him out eagle.
I ask all men to quarter me and spread me out eagle.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you could find us. If you had 2 hours, there's 3 places in Phoenix you could find Gene and I. The Highlighter, the Tilted Kilt, or the Grid Games and Growlers. Those are the 3 places we typically are. And thank you so much for writing in. We really appreciate you listening and your thoughts. The next email, River Rant, comes in from Richard. Richard had a really nice email here. We're going to pick up pieces of it, but you can go on our website and check it, the full one. He goes in and he says, my main issue with the show is that I thought we were getting something in the vein of Poe or Lovecraft, a dark, horror-inspired story, when it was actually an Ocean's 1814 heist show. I have a feeling Big D may be onto something when he said the show used its mysticism as a draw to get people to watch and then sidelined the stuff at the end. Even the name of the show is kind of a red herring. What was actually so taboo about the purpose of the show? Sure, James had a relationship with his half-sister, but even that ended up being more than, an aside to the central of the narrative. In fact, almost every taboo brought up in the show was an aside. Roger is correct that if they had just played the entire thing as a historical fiction, it would have been at least more honest to what the show ended up being. There was a lot of atmosphere, but I never thought they got to the next level of characterization. After the first episode, Gene said he liked that the dialogue and narrative had a lot of subtext and they didn't spoon-feed it to you. I agreed, but after 8 episodes, I feel like they never got beyond it. Like Roger said in the deep dive, they could have at least shown us so much. The East India slave trade, the James and Zilpha's early relationship, maybe the good times, and so on. The overly tight focus on James and his mystery box characterization may have inhibited the show from pushing deeper. If you believe that James was really just using people, then I guess the show's lack of interest in digging deeper makes some sense. The biggest plot hole for me? Why would all of these people want to follow James to America? The stepmom, probably son, and the horror witnesses. Yeah, I get it. They're probably dead if they stay. And Atticus and the supposed crew, Chumley, the mad scientist. It's not like their lives are ruined, right? However, thank you for another great podcast series. I hope to see you again when American Gods rolls out, assuming I can convince my wife to subscribe to the channel. And again, that comes from Richard. Who wants to tackle this first?
Well, and I had thought of this. What was the motivation of the League of the Damned to follow him? Was it fear? Was it loyalty? Was it monetary? Other than paying Atticus in the beginning and when he was throwing around to Helga's girls as part of the gunpowder heist, I don't think money was it, because it seems like his diamonds are pretty much gone. His wealth is gone. The fear only gets you so far. Fear doesn't necessarily get you on that ship to America. It might get you to do something James wants. So then is it loyalty? What reason would he give them to follow, to want to be with him? They weren't righting any real wrongs. They weren't doing anything for the good of themselves or for London. So I don't know. It's not believable to any of their characters that they would choose to give up, for all intents and purposes, a nice, relatively comfortable life in the civilized world in London to go to America where they don't know what they're going to find, the unknown.
I think one insight that you're going to want to have is this is 1814. It is prohibitively expensive to get to the United States, where there is a great deal of opportunity. So you've got people in London who are prostitutes, criminals. It's a fresh start, but also a lot of people to get to the U.S. from Ireland, from England, from Wales, they had to actually go as indentured servants. Like you would have to sell part of your life away to even get there. And this is basically a free trip to the New World. Why not?
Because it's not a free trip without strings. You're on a skeleton crew on a ship of no one who is a seasoned seaman. So this isn't just... Don't make that face at me because I said seaman. This isn't just a trip to the U.S. This is a crapshoot. This is you getting in a car with someone who's never driven before and saying, I'll get on the highway and drive you where you want to go.
Well, no, James is an experienced seaman, and you have to also assume that Atticus, based on the fact that he's got a giant nautical compass tattooed to his head, probably has some seafaring experience.
Okay, I grew up on the coast, and I actually took sailing lessons when I was young for one summer. Have either of you tried to do even small caliber sailing?
Listen, Big D, this is 2017. No.
Okay.
In 1814, look, did any of those guys know how to drive a car? I mean, come on. Like,
my point is this, okay? So I took a sailing course over a summer in these small boats. It was an absolute shit show by having like 10 teenagers trying to sail, watching us tack, people getting hit, falling in the water. It was a Benny Hill episode. And I imagine that that's what this will be. If James and Atticus are the only two manning that ship, Christ, they can't even raise the mainsail.
Yeah, I think we talked about this in the deep dive, right? You have not only are a couple of these people may not have the best intentions or the best motivations rather to go to America with, Atticus and James, but also some of them either sick or have major injuries to where they're just a burden, right? And we talked about the idea that medically and, even if you were healthy, ships would lose a third of its crew, right, to different disease and lack of food. Now, we know they've got 2 weeks of provisions. We know they're going to the Azores. Maybe they'll pick up additional crew when they drop off the gunpowder. But if I had to pick a motivation for why they got on is probably has more to do with fear than anything else, right? The fear of retribution of the East India or the crown coming down. And that's why I feel bad for Brace, because he's the only one that's still alive that's left in London. You know that someone's going to point that he was part of this and he's not going to have any backup, right? You can't imagine that they're just going to let him survive in the James Delaney household.
Just in case you forgot, the entire key leadership of the East India is dead.
Yeah, but the crown, right? The crown was angry at James Delaney. The crown, coup. I mean, all the soldiers. Brace was there. He partook in the fight against the soldiers. So I just would have liked to have Brace, on the ship. But Richard, thank you so much for writing in. Our next email, River Rant, comes in from Tom. Tom writes in, he says, just like none of the bombs failing, it doesn't take a Navy admiral to realize that the ship they sailed under would never get away. 1 minute, they're fending off soldiers from what seemed like just yards away, and within seconds, they were under full sail in the harbor. However, I still enjoyed the action and the episode. If you are taking count from my listeners, my dollar says that Zilpha is still alive. Thanks again for the enjoyable reviews. That's from Tom P. So he kind of is in the same boat as you, Big D, in terms of he doesn't think that they could hoist those sails as quickly as they did.
He's not only just talking about the actual physical exertion to raise the sails. It takes time to actually get underway and to build up, and you have to get out of port. But this is the second time we've seen an extra slow escape where they tried to get the gunpowder out with the horse-drawn wagon. This is becoming a regular occurrence in Taboo.
No, but this was the opposite, Big D. I mean, it was like they had a motorboat going. Like they got on, and suddenly you look at they cut to the B-roll of a hull like just breaching the water, and they were shooting along. Like it wasn't just the cruise. I would have believed more if it was kind of slower and that just the redcoats were missing at that distance.
Yeah, but not only that, but you got to expect that there's probably British naval ships guarding the entry of the ports that, hey, we understand that you have a note from the East India, right? And you're flying under strange. Yeah, but still like it. I mean, these harbors have got to see that, hey, there was probably something going on. I mean, at least we're going to pull you over here and see what's going on.
I mean, beyond ships being out there, the harbors have batteries. Like they would just be able to fire on them. Like, right. But again, I mean, the communication at the time to get the message to the battery that you need to shoot these guys. Maybe.
Shut up! You could have gotten on a horse and driven faster than that ship could have gotten out.
That's
there.
True. That's factually true.
And you know what those other ships have on them that is kind of important? Sailors.
That's right.
So they would be able to catch them. What do you think? Like the entire Crown Navy couldn't see them hightailing out after they had just killed maybe 30 redcoats? I'd be like, oh, look, there they go. Let's raise our sails and let's go get them.
I'd have to say that Pirates of the Caribbean explained a harbor getaway better than Taboo, right? When Captain Jack Sparrow pretends that he's going to steal the ship, and then all the British soldiers get in and they hoist all the sails and they're ready to attack, and then he gets off and goes to their ship that's already set for sail. Like that explains it better than Taboo did. And that's a Disney film. So anyway, all right. Thanks so much for writing in, Tom. The next River Rant email comes in from V. V writes, the James Delaney in episode 8 is more or less the same James Delaney in episode 1. It is bizarre storytelling for a character-driven story to leave the main protagonist unaltered by series events. James got everything he wanted in the end. Answers, revenge, Zilpha not Zilpha, and a ship. None of the events had changed him as a person, even though he himself had irrevocably altered the lives of those around him. Presumably, he will continue killing and scheming with the same moral compass intact. We saw glimmers of character development with Winter's death until he was absolved of it. He mourned Zilpha for 5 minutes and then went back to business. Side note, he cried from guilt and not from missing her because he was planning on abandoning her anyway, and I would venture that Zilpha, in her limited scenes, had more character development than James did. We see her journey through various stages of self-discovery. However, I will continue to be a fan of Taboo, but lesser so of James Delaney and Tom Hardy. Cheers, V.
All right. On the issue of guilt, I couldn't disagree more, V. He was not crying out of guilt. Come on. This is his sister. This is or his half sister. This is somebody he was in love with, and she's dead now because of what he did. But more importantly, he's not concerned. He doesn't see it as his own fault. So it's not guilt. He's seeing it as something went wrong and he's searching for why he didn't notice or why he didn't feel it or something like that. James, as he says in episode 1, when he's talking to the apparition, the demon, the slave, whatever it is in the morgue, he doesn't have guilt. He doesn't feel guilt. After what happened to him in Africa, he doesn't experience guilt. This is sorrow, plain and simple.
I don't think it's sorrow. I think it's just self-pity. He portrays himself as this big, brooding, strong, dominating presence. He's weak. In these moments, you see, when things don't work out for him, it's pathetic. And in this, I think James showed his weakness. Now, whether it was realizing that he had misjudged the situation or the exorcism had somehow separated himself from Zilpha and that connection was broken, but there was zero character growth through the entire 8 episodes. And like, who was this?
This is V.
Yeah, and like V said, the only true character that we really saw grow was Zilpha, and they just discarded her like a piece of trash.
And do you think that's also part of the problems that we had, is the fact that in a story like this, when it's character driven, you want to see a protagonist at least learn something or grow or change from for episode 1 to episode 8. There seems to be, like, James Delaney is the same character he was when he first appeared on screen. What did he learn?
I think that development it's a fairly new phenomenon. Though, like, Breaking Bad was one of the first series that had a major series that had a character that was unrecognizable from episode 1 to the finale, right? That's what made it powerful. Most shows that we enjoy just fine don't have a great deal of character development. And that's not necessarily, again, we're talking about, you're asking a character to develop over the course of like a couple weeks. That's a bit much.
Okay, so I don't even want character development, but you can reveal the motivations and get us to truly understand the characters. We had 8 episodes. I feel like by the end, Chamanli, we knew him. We cared about him. He was a person. He was a living, breathing thing. James was still that cardboard cutout, grunting, brooding top hat with a beard.
I just love the fact that you keep calling him Chamanli.
Yeah, over 8 episodes, we learned.
I don't give a shit. He is fucking Chamanli.
It's Chamanli. Chun-Li.
Fuck you. He's Chun-Li.
No, but like he points out, the character that seemed to develop the most was Zilpha, and they took the conscious decision to kill her off. I would argue that Lorna Bowe would probably be the next most developed or changed character, and she might die. Right? So, I mean, are they taking this in the right direction to be a successful character-driven drama?
If you're not going to grow the character, let me understand them better. Right. And they didn't do either with James.
I agree. I mean, point to Game of Thrones. You don't have to go to Breaking Bad. You go to Game of Thrones and see how Robb Stark has evolved over those seasons. So,
Robb Stark's actually dead.
He started off. He was alive, and then he died. No, I'm talking about Jon Snow. Sorry.
Yeah, Jon Snow. Good work. And if we do a Westworld, if we do a Game of Thrones cast, you better dust off the old DVDs.
I'm gonna call him John Chamanli. That's what I'm gonna call him. All right, V. Thanks so much for writing in. The next River Rant email comes in from Steve E. Steve E. writes some brief thoughts about Zilpha after watching the first 7 episodes of Taboo. During your first Taboo podcast, you gave a shout out to Jonathan Pryce, who plays Sir Stuart Strange, for his role as the High Sparrow in, of course, Game of Thrones. Surely, Una Chaplin, who plays Zilpha, is equally deserving of a shout out for her role as Talisa, the charming bride of Robb Stark. Both James and Salish practice shamanistic rituals involving blowing ash from their hands. When Thorne returned home from his duel with James, Zilpha's hands were covered with ash. By having Thorne comment on it, the show's writers ensured the viewers wouldn't fail to notice. I was surprised when it wasn't mentioned during your podcast. And that comes from Steve E. First of all, I had no idea that Una Chaplin actually was Robb Stark's wife.
I knew because I looked her up immediately and was like, what else has she been in? How can you compare the two?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, Robb Stark's wife was in a couple episodes, very minor role. The High Sparrow was like a major character in the show's progression. Again, I mean, I guess we could have, done the courtesy of naming her, but you can't. That's apples and oranges, man.
She died at the Red Wedding, right?
That is correct.
Okay.
God, I hope everyone listening to this has watched all of Game of Thrones. Otherwise, they're going to be really pissed.
I actually enjoyed her character. I was, even though I didn't know that was Una Chaplin until now, I know that character, and I was in love with that character. I think she looked a little bit more my type of girl in Game of Thrones versus Jean's type of girl in Taboo.
All right, Raj, tell me right now, why were you in love with her?
She was the farm girl, right? She was the charming farm girl that Robb had to win over. She wasn't impressed by him. She made him work for it, right? We're talking about the same character, right?
So your criteria is charming farm girl who makes you work for it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's, if you look at any of my ex-girlfriends, they've all been charming, milkmaids that have challenged who I am and my status in life. But it's interesting that he does point out here that Zilpha's obviously dabbling in the same dark arts, and we failed to mention that on the podcast.
Yeah, that's a great catch. I didn't notice it at all, and that's I was busy looking at the flowers and seeing the symbolism there. Totally missed the fact that she had ash on her hands. Great catch, Steve.
So does that lead her when she's practicing in the dark arts? Does that lead her towards her death? I mean, is that the ultimate nail in her coffin? Like, what is the purpose of understanding and pointing that out? As Steve writes out, he's like, well, the writers purposefully said that her hands were ashy, and then she goes and kills Thorne. Is that her descent? Does that show her descent into madness, like James?
No, I think what Steve's indicating here is that she was practicing a ritual during this duel while Thorne was away, which leads you to wonder what was she pushing for? And I think the answer is quite obvious, but that she wanted Thorne to fail and was surprised when he came home alive.
Aha, that is a good catch. I had no idea. Thank you, Steve and Gene, for pointing that out for me. The next River Rant email comes in from Walter. Walter writes in, "My people are from Louisiana. We are Creole. Free people who descended from African slaves and their children born from French and Spanish fathers. The culture gave rise to many with the gift of," and he has in quotation marks here, "sight. My grandmother was one of these people. Their visions are most vivid when they feature their loved ones, but are heightened in matters of life and death. They predict the birth, gender, and traits of children not yet conceived. They predict death and tragedy, and the power is dark and borders madness. James walks this same line. Because he doesn't sense his sister or seems to have a mental break doesn't mean he's disconnected with the spirits that guide and torture him. I suspect Zilpha will take his place of his mother's restless spirit. Brace may have freed him from his mother's hold only to leave James vulnerable to his sister, a bond surely deeper and darker. If there were two halves of one, he's open to a much darker mysticism now. The mother would have been similarly gifted and stricken. Zilpha used her religion to supreme herself. James, his darkness is his mask. It was a good show overall. Its depiction of London didn't have the depth of Ripper Street, a better BBC show that also had no following and is the reason I believe we'll get 3 seasons. The finale was rushed and trite, but very entertaining. Sorry for the long email. You guys do a great job. Why must we wait so long for Samurai World? P.S. I think Roger and Gene would approve. And I think he means Roger Ebert and Gene Siskel. And this comes from Walter. What do we think of this, guys?
It's hard for me. I'm going to pass this off to Gene because I am not the most spiritually enlightened member of this threesome.
I like what Walter had to say about Zilpha taking the place of James's mother. One of the things that you should notice about episode 8 is that we don't see Anna Delaney or Salish in his visions, right? What we do see in the scene where he has just killed Dumbarton is we see now that, just as Walter said, Zilpha has taken her place. I misspoke on the deep dive when I said that he doesn't sense her anymore. He doesn't feel her. He actually does in this episode. After he finds out that she is dead, or is told that she is dead, James is at Dumbarton's office, and he sees her. They have a moment in the water, and they kiss. I think that this is a very astute, we use that word a lot, but it is accurate in the sense, observation by Walter that in fact she has taken that spot. That's a very interesting, and I think that is a way that Una Chaplin can continue her role, even if Zilpha is dead in this sense, that she will be the new spirit that's guiding or torturing him. I love that idea.
So do we believe that is actually a spirit that is guiding him, or is it James holding on to the memory and almost using, them as a vessel to drive him forward?
Right. I'm of the thought, as much as it disappoints me, or I shouldn't say it disappoints me, as much as it conflicts with my hopes, I'm of the thought that this is in his head. That because, again, the pattern that we keep seeing is he'll receive information in the normal, commonplace world that then affects his perception of the spiritual world. You would think it would go the other way around. Mm-hmm. But then on the counter, you've got the argument that how does he know things that he shouldn't by any means know? We still haven't seen that mechanism by which he's picking that up. Is he actually being told? Is he, or are spirits telling him, or are real people telling him? But point being is that we're still up in the air on that. But I'm leaning on the side that, that in fact this is in his head. He is just a very damaged human being.
Right. So if he does, in fact, have the sight, as Walter suggests, that many Creole and the people who subscribe to a lot of these type of beliefs, essentially Zilpha will become his dark Obi-Wan. It wouldn't be a podcast if we didn't mention Westworld, Game of Thrones, or Star Wars. So that's me log jamming that in.
I love that you say that, Raj, while I'm looking behind you in your office and it's just a bunch of collectibles on the shelves.
Hard to believe that, right? Walter, thank you so much for writing in. The next River Rant email comes in from Christine. Christine writes, I know I am in the vast minority, but I feel that Taboo has never, ever been about mysticism or the supernatural. Even if it has been packaged that way, there are no Wendigos or vampires hiding out in 17th century London, folks. At least, not in this universe. My takeaway is that this show is about a mentally broken man who has experienced and participated in some absolutely depraved and macabre things. We are talking about the most vile, wretched, evil activities that humans can do to one another. And at this point in our examination of James Delaney's story, I don't even think we have scratched the surface. I want a second season, if for nothing else than to find out what those things are. They are going to be crazy. Having said that, I don't necessarily think that James is insane. He's not a psychopath. A sociopath, maybe, but it's pretty clear that he has some sort of mental illness, likely due to trauma, and probably suffers from PTSD. And his visions and behaviors seem to underline that. He also comes from a genetic stock that is prone to mental health problems. Horace, Salish, Zilpha. The clan Delaney as a whole struggles with challenges to their mental faculties. I worry for Robert, poor kid. In his previous experiences, I think James's brain has been snapped, stretched, and manipulated in all sorts of directions. That's a difficult thing to come through unscathed, but maybe I am completely wrong, and it's all about the hooga booga. I will say this, I will be extremely disappointed if that is the case. First, I would expect better from the Stephen Wright, Love Peaky Blinders, Tom Hardy, and Ridley Scott triumvirate. Second, it's just much more interesting and a compelling story if the struggles are rooted completely within the human condition and cannot be swept away by another supernatural trope. Cheers. And this comes from the dirty underground. What do you think of this?
I agree. A big component of this is you're talking James's mental illness. And I believe that he is cognizant. He is aware. He is not delusional. He's not deluded. He's very aware of what he has done and that what he has done is wrong. The title of the show, Taboo, what have we really seen besides incest? There's been really justification of taboo as the title of the show, other than his references to what he's done in the past, making slavery look like nothing. There's very few things I can think of in the world, the horrors that have gone on, that would put slavery to shame. What else could he have done?
He is ripping out priests' tongues, right? or the caretaker of his child. He's ripping out his tongue, and he's ripping out hearts of other people. I mean, that's pretty taboo. I mean, he's a serial killer.
But he has killed people who have come to either attack him or threaten him. He implies that what he has done makes slavery look like nothing. Murder of one person who snitched on you or killing an assassin, I don't think that's comparable. He has to have been part of some large-scale atrocity to justify the way he's tormented inside.
I think, Big D, what you said earlier about not revealing much about the personality or the inner workings of a person, I think this applies here too with the show. It's a little crazy that we are now a season in, and I could see an episode, I could see 4 episodes, 5 episodes in, where you don't really understand what's at play here. But I think for a show to really be worth the time it takes to watch it, you should, after a season, kind of know what the engine is. And we talked about the engine with Westworld, right? We know that it's science fiction. We know that it's about what it is to be human, about transhumanism. We know basically what's going on in the show. We understand the universe. The rules have been laid out for us, right? So anything going forward in Westworld, we know, we have an understanding that you can make those rules more sophisticated. You can get more nuance. You can get more subtle in your delineation. But the rules still apply. And here we still don't know exactly how to take this universe in. And you've had 8 episodes to establish that. So that is another part. As much as we don't see inside the characters, we're also not seeing inside the rules of this world. And that's for something that's rooted in the actual world, that's a bit upsetting.
Yeah, I'm going to have to tend to agree with you on that one, Gene. Christine, the Dirty Underground.
Where are you getting underground? It's just
the dirty
ground.
Oh, it's the dirty ground.
Yeah, dirty underground makes it sound like...
like really dirty.
Yeah.
Like you got to go underground to get the dirt. Right, all right. Next River Rant email comes from Jamia. Jamia writes in, sorry for the following language and the length, but I'm highly pissed off. What the fuck? Really? That's how they ended her character? For 6 consecutive episodes, James has relentlessly pursued Zilpha in the open, by mail, through dreams, which led to her being ousted at a ball by her husband and brother for some shit that happened 10 years ago. She tried her hardest to get him to leave her alone. She may have been in a loveless marriage, however, she was still okay, just like everyone else that involved themselves with James. They were okay until, due to her husband's jealousy, she was beaten, raped, and molested by a priest. Someone that caged up was bound to snap, especially in the case of this show. That is exactly what happened to Zilpha. She was pushed to killing Thorne by the actions of both her husband and her brother. She was a person who was completely shut down, alone, trapped, not being able to be who she really was. Then your long-lost dead brother lover comes back with all these declarations that they would leave together. She saw a light at the end of a very dark tunnel. Now we are talking about James. However, with those two, it seems all would just be fine as they are both crazy as hell and knew each other's insanity. Let's keep in mind that she had no clue as to what James's plans were. Hell, we don't. But she was willing to give it all blindly. Everyone else had their own agenda to going along with James, as their life was a pile of shit anyway. They knew about his plans. Zilpha didn't. He kept her out of everything. Then, in episode 7, after getting him some, he breaks up with her because Mom walks in and he freaks. I do still think it was out of love, however. What the fuck does she have to go back to, dumbass? She has nothing. She is damned. Then we get to episode 8 where she kills herself. Piss me the hell off. She was the only thing he couldn't predict. All of his wisdom, knowledge, and cleverness of what everyone is going to do, where everyone is, and how to get to them in a 4-hour period. And he couldn't see that? He reads the letter, and only after he knows she's dead does he hear her sing to him. As an important character, Zilpha was why we did not see her body to fully confirm she is dead. We see Winter's body, we see everyone's body, but hers. Why? Would it have been so hard to film one scene of her on the shores? Was that too much? Or did they leave a door open as if all of this was in his head? Maybe she could have survived. Sorry guys, I know this is long. However, I feel Zilpha was so underutilized and could have been a great character once she was able to let her hair down. They could have brought some female wild into a very male-dominated show. I guess they will use Lorna for that. For me, I would have much more have liked Zilpha breaking out than Lorna coming into play. I hope this is not the last we have seen from Zilpha, even if she appears in spirit form. I'm pretty sure James will feel some kind of guilt for her demise, just like that of his mother and Horace. Like father, like son. P.S. I love the podcast. You guys are great. This comes from Jamia. She goes by Mia in Dallas, Texas.
So I think the show has given us the answer. Remember the mechanism in which they reveal her suicide. It is the voiceover narration of her note, which is later delivered to James. And the voice we hear is slightly different from the note. We are not viewing this from a third person. It is in a vision form. It has to be James's visualization of reading the letter and hearing the voice of his sister. There's no way we would want to see or would need to see Zilpha stand up on the edge and jump while she narrates her own motivations. It's pointless. It's redundant. It wouldn't happen. And that answers the question why we couldn't see an extra shot of her laying on the shore, because she's probably not dead. But that being said, if she is not dead and the show would risk carrying that cliffhanger over to a season 2 that might not exist or never happen, you have cheated the character you created in the show by not guaranteeing an ending that she deserved.
Addressing the other part of Mia's River Rant, Zilpha underused, absolutely. I also appreciate that she brought up that no women in this show are that wild. I mean, you would think Helga, right, of all people, would be some sort of a crazed force, some sort of just someone to be reckoned with. I mean, considering she runs essentially a prostitution empire, she's gunned down. You've got Lorna, who's basically like, as we've called before, sort of a Nancy Drew character. She handles herself again when confronted with a potential rape scenario. She stabs a guy, but we don't have any sort of a female foil to James. And I was really hoping that Zilpha was going to be revealed to be this thing that was darker than James, stronger than James, like something that was just an absolute terror unleashed. And when that didn't happen, that was really heartbreaking as far as the development of the show. However, I agree with Big D that the scene where she does commit suicide, it is dreamlike. It is not approached with the same realism that so many other scenes in this show are. So there is a door wide open for that. And again, with the way they have the boat scene with the escape, with her suicide, with all the things, I think they really wanted to leave every possibility on the table for season 2. And if there isn't a season 2, the joke's on us.
Let me ask you guys this. Would you be more satisfied if she came back in a spirit form, or if she were to walk in the door of Brace, she walks through the Delaney household and, she sees Brace sees her, and, he sees a ghost, so to speak?
Both would disappoint me. The fact that this character who we had hoped would become strong and independent would feign her own suicide in order to get James's attention, that cheapens her. Her coming back as an apparition cheapens her. They fucked it up, and it'll be difficult for them to fix it.
Okay, let's get a little tinfoil here. What if this is orchestrated by Lorna? What if she's the one who kind of talks James into getting a move on and letting this all go? She had access to leave the note for him. It seems like it's very possible that she either, disposed of or did something to Zilpha. It's quite possible. And what better way to get James over it than, he knows his sister's unstable, and that that to me would be satisfying. That the person he thinks is his ally actually, crossed him this whole time. But again, I don't think the show is going to rise to that depth of sophistication. It would be cool.
Well, what if Zilpha and Lorna are in cahoots, though?
Well, hold on. Let me answer Gene's hypothesis before we go to a secondary hypothesis. Lorna would have nothing to gain by putting the note. All it would do is risk getting James derailed from the mission at hand, which is getting the crew ready and on the ship. By putting the note there, it could actually undo all of their plans and all of their escape. She seems to be sitting there while he's reading it, hoping and praying that he comes to a sensible end and that he does not just fall to pieces on the floor and leave them all stranded.
No, I mean, I guess that makes sense. That would totally kill my hypothesis of Lorna and Zilpha working together, right? I mean, to hide Zilpha from James. Anyway. All right. Thank you so much for writing in, Mia. Our next River Rant email comes in from Tanya from Tokyo, one of our favorite River Rant listeners. She writes in, I was very upset by the death of Helga. If you put together all the little pieces of her biography dispersed throughout the entire season, her fate seems the most tragic of all. As she is quite beautiful, is British by marriage, and could not be older than 40, she was probably brought to the UK by a British man at a rather young age and then abandoned. She didn't have any life skills or simply didn't speak the language, so the only way for her to survive was to sell her own body. She then had winter and probably had a lot of trouble protecting her from the world she had been born into. Her beloved daughter was eventually brutally killed, and she herself was first imprisoned by the EIC and then shot in cold blood. Even though she betrayed James at some point, she had her reasons. Let me assure you that no matter how seemingly hot Tom Hardy is, not all the ladies out there would agree to get on the ship with him. I personally consider him a heartless scumbag that has nothing saint in his life, to the point of not wanting season 2 to see the light of day. I really enjoy Taboo, its aesthetics, its historical elements, its characters, and provocative elements, but it's just too cruel. Thank you ever so much for making sense of things for all the Shat On Nation people out there. I've already ordered my American Gods book and cannot wait for the next show to start. Sorry for a lengthy rant, and all the best. Tanya from Tokyo. So she's really upset over this Helga death. And does that go into kind of what Mia was saying over the fact that they just kind of killed off strong female characters?
Yeah, I mean, Helga's death it happened so suddenly. This is how I know that a show didn't live up to its potential, is that I cared more about Chun-Li's death than Helga's. And Helga is a much more tragic figure. She was James's, first. She was, again, the sort of the stage mom to all these prostitutes. She was Winter's mom. She's been through a lot, and you can play on so many of those aspects to really get to the marrow of pain in this show, and there was a missed opportunity there. So I agree with Tanya. I do guarantee you, Tanya, American Gods is full of a lot more hope and not nearly as mean as this show. So stick with us.
God, forget about the fact that it didn't affect us, because it was a throwaway. It didn't affect any of the other characters on screen. Helga's shot in the back, and no one bats an eye. It wasn't like you saw the emotions pouring out of James and the rest of the crew. And Helga was a pretty strong character. She, like Tanya says, she had dealt with a lot, and I had hoped for more. And unfortunately, when we recorded the deep dive, I had made a comment that this was a bad day for the ladies. And it really was. They were getting gunned down left and right, and none of them got the ending that they deserved. And it was sad. I wish we could have seen. Maybe she's alive. Who knows? Maybe she'll come back to James as an apparition. Maybe she really didn't get shot.
I also like the fact that Tanya would not immediately sleep with James Delaney. She seems to be one of the... You noticed that
she wouldn't go on the ship with him on principle.
Right.
But it didn't sound like she was against it, for other reasons.
For a roll in the hay?
Yeah, if James was nicer to her, she'd probably get on that ship.
She'd get right on. Tanya, thanks so much for writing in. The next River Rant email comes in from James. James writes in, "G'day, gents. I'm a listener down in Australia, over from the Westworld podcast. In the episode 8 Taboo deep dive, I heard the comment about hipster girls swooning over Atticus' assistant, Bill. I chuckled, and I thought I'd let you know a little bit about the bloke doing that brief yet magnificently bearded role. That actor with the glorious facial hair, David Meads, is better known to many as the artist Scroobius Pip. And you can see one of his music videos here, and he's linked out to YouTube. Feel free to share that if any of the girls in Shat Nation need a little bit more swooning material. Keep up the good work, and I look forward to the American Gods podcast. Best regards from the Antipodes," and that's James. So, we also got this alert on Twitter. I posted a picture of Atticus with Bill, and I said, this is the hipster bargain basement Hugh Jackman, as we had pointed. That's what we called him on the podcast, the deep dive, out of jest. The amount of people that wrote in and said, "Hey, you back off of Scroobius Pip here."
So there's two types of entertainers that I cannot stand. One is improv comedians, and two is spoken word artists. And Scroobius Pip is the latter. So you can take that awesome beard and that cool face and that that imposing figure and just say, dude, he's a spoken word artist. I'm sorry, but not buying into it. He did much better on this show than he does in his normal life.
Yeah. But I feel like spoken word artists are big in the hipster barista community.
What is this, 1964?
1864. That's more like it. Thanks so much for writing in, James. Next River Rant email comes in from our favorite Stefano. Stefano writes in, I wanted to stress a particular aspect of this and other, in my opinion, similarly ambitious series, linked in particular with the problems of wrapping up storylines and creating meaningful narratives. The examples, which I'm referencing to in the title of his email, are Lost, True Detective, and Peaky Blinders. Along with Taboo, they create a vastly interconnected world. They swap and switch styles between episodes and flood the viewer with partial information, visual clues, and masterful action scenes, but end up, however, leaving the viewer hanging and with a slight sense of disappointment at the end. They fail to put all the pieces together in a meaningful manner so that some storylines are lazily and sloppily wrapped up, Zilpha as an example, and the meaningful intellectual content discarded in favor of action scenes which do not make a lot of sense, with the notable exception of You Would Not Know What to Do with Freedom Line. In particular, some aspects are abandoned, the spirituality themes. On one hand, the severed link between James and his mother could derive from the realization that Salish actually tried to kill him. We are left wondering and speculating why. Could it be revenge on Horace? On the other, you have already pointed out, James puts into motion an excessively convoluted plan from the tower. Once the mysticism and visions are abandoned, apart from the vision during the torture, there is really no motivation or reason for James to be so many steps ahead of the competition. In any case, thanks for the ride and keep up the good work. That comes from Stefano.
A bigger problem I have, no one betrayed him other than the farmer. When you're dealing with, or the guy with his thumb that he cut off, who really, he was just more negligent in his protection of the ship. When you're dealing with the underworld, you would expect that type of partner, that person that you would be dealing with, money is their main motivator, and that people flip all the time. People snitch, people tell on each other, people sell you out. No one betrayed James, really, in any meaningful way. I find that unbelievable and odd.
Let me ask you this. So he points out the fact that ambitious series like Lost, Peaky Blinders, which I haven't seen Peaky Blinders, they get too wrapped up in some of their storytelling, right? They have too much hubris, and they try and wrap up storylines quickly with action scenes. Do you think like a show like Breaking Bad, which like we talked about was a slow burn character development, the way that it ended was almost perfect. Even though they had developed this character and tied up all the storylines, the finale, again, spoiler alert for Breaking Bad, it's kind of fantastical. This whole idea that a chemistry person would create an auto gun in the trunk of a car, right? Do we give Breaking Bad a pass for something like that because they did such an effective job of tying up the storylines in the beginning?
I think one thing that Breaking Bad did that a lot of shows failed to do is most shows we see the character, James, for instance, in this case, he had a million options and he chose a far-fetched option. It was a weird thing to do, right? So you look at what he achieved and could he have gone about better ways of achieving it? Walter White's character in Breaking Bad is quite the opposite. He starts out with a problem that he's got to solve and not a lot of options on how to solve it. And that sets him down a path. And when it gets to the end for him, the decisions that he makes and the actions he carries out, it's because he's been boxed in. He feels he has no alternatives. And so it's not like he has a million options and he chooses a really weird one, like putting a machine gun in the back of a car, but rather that he has boxed himself in psychologically and factually to the point where he feels he has no other option than this crazy ass plan. So it works for me. In this case, not necessarily. I do hope that Stefano is talking about True Detective Season 2, because True Detective Season 1 is a goddamn masterpiece.
Yeah, True Detective, you can't even imagine the same writer of True Detective Season 1 also wrote True Detective Season 2, because True Detective Season 2 is a shit show. It is a terrible... Do not waste your time watching True Detective Season 2, especially if you enjoyed True Detective Season 1. Like you said, it's a goddamn masterpiece. But yeah, do you think that the show needs to simplify? Do you think that in season 2 it just needs to get to the root of what it should be, which is a historical fiction, following a guy who's got some mental issues, but, focus on the action and, fun part of, intrigue and things like that happen in those historical pieces?
Unfortunately, this is the BBC, and that's one thing that we really haven't discussed on this show, and that the BBC, unfortunately, again, is obsessed with period pieces. They love period pieces. They love reflecting on a time when they had an empire and they were great, and
right.
they bask in the royals, they bask in the monarchy, they bask in all these notions of grandeur, and I think that they get really into that period piece part of it. And so you've got something conflicting here. You've got this period piece that you're trying to pull off, but then you got this mysticism you're trying to pull off, but then you got the intrigue you're trying to pull off, then you got the whodunit you're trying. And so there's a lot going on. Like, imagine if they try to do similar elements, but you just took away the fact that it was in 1814, right? Or imagine if you had a historical piece, but you took away the factor of the mysticism. Or imagine that you got this creepy mystic show that's set in 1814, but you took away that political intrigue. Yeah, you got something to work with. But trying to juggle all these things at once, you see that it gets, you're trying to make sausage and you're making a mess.
Okay, so what would you cut from that? So by your logic, by cutting some of that and focusing on the stuff that works, what would that be in your mind?
Any simplified version of those three. Decide what you want to be and go with it. Don't do half of a season one way, then change midstream. Be consistent. We'll accept you for either way. If you're a historically accurate period piece, I would like it. If it's a whodunit murder mystery caper with some swashbuckling, I'd like it. Decide what you're going to be. I don't want to tell them what to do. Just don't be schizophrenic and all over the place. It's difficult to watch sometimes.
Thank you so much for writing in our final email River Rant of the episode, and the season 1 of Taboo FX comes from Kevin. Kevin writes in, season 1 was all about grimy 1814 London, and they usually didn't pull punches with the filth, disease, and violence of the time. Each locale had a specific mood that was fun to explore. Beyond the obvious ship scenes, Season 2 could focus on the coastal Azores and possible wayward locations, meaning the Caribbean, Bermuda, etc., on their way to colonial America, setting up for a really interesting Season 3, where they deal with the growing pains of a new country. Season 4 could be their trek across this beautiful but treacherous United States, almost like an Oregon Trail-style season of challenges on their way to the Pacific Northwest. The final season could be about reaching the settlements that James and other characters make in the Northwest Washington and Canada, or even a detour into a very early California gold rush. All of these locations come with their own characters and historical scenarios all of us could imagine and get excited about. I just wanted to hear your thoughts on how you would like to see possible future seasons play out. All the best, Kevin.
I think Kevin's given us a good blueprint of where the show could go. I hope that Tom Hardy isn't just trying to remake The Revenant in the Pacific Northwest. That'd be a little disturbing. But one option that also could happen is that they never leave this struggle between the United States and the Crown. Maybe they head to Ireland. Maybe they join the blockade. Maybe they become operatives back in London again. There's all sorts of options here. And again, I think that I like that that Kevin's thinking big here, because the season 2 could take us anywhere, and the show could totally redeem itself, or it could totally be an absolute piece of crap. No one is to say right now.
Yeah, I think Kevin should get a job in the writer's room because he has some great ideas. But let's remember, we're unsure of season 2 because of the financial issues. The series, which on scale in London really wasn't that expensive to produce. If you turn this into a grand epic in the United States, where they're traveling across the expanses of the West, or they're in colonial America, you're not going to do that for $10 million or whatever it is that Tom Hardy put into this. For that, my fear, and I hope it doesn't come true, is that final statement where they were discussing with James about going to the Americas, and he says, we're not going to the Americas yet, we have somewhere to stop. I don't think it's just a pit stop. I don't think they're leaving the general United Kingdom, unfortunately.
It would be kind of amazing to see James in that outfit, trekking across a sandy beach, though. That would be pretty outstanding. I personally 1814 grimy London is where I want to spend eternity, and so I wish that they would just stay there. But I'm willing to say that a change of scenery wouldn't hurt the show.
So you're saying you don't want this to turn into Tom Hardy Far and Away or Far Away, the Nicole Kidman Tom Cruise?
That's Far and Away.
Yeah. Do you want this to turn into that, where they're going to go west, or they're going to go to the gold rush, or they're going to spend time in 1800s New York?
Tell me you like my hat, James. Tell me I like my hat.
I told you I'm going to go old school box right now. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do it for you.
Listen, if they did a Gangs of America, because that's what I think of. I'm sorry, Gangs of New York with Leonardo DiCaprio and help me out here, guys. The actor of our generation, Daniel Day-Lewis,
Bill the Butcher.
Bill the Butcher.
Bill the Butcher fucked up James Delaney. 100%.
Yeah, so who do you think wins? Really?
Bill the Butcher beats the piss out of him.
That would be a great fucking fight scene, though, right?
I want season 2 just for that. Let's do it.
So our mutual buddy and listener, Chet, I was talking with him earlier this week, and he goes, what if they turn this into like some sort of an X-Men sort of thing where they're like, like this boat is like their X-Jet or whatever, and they just go around stopping bad guys and stuff with their powers. And I was like, well, not everybody's got, in fact, most of them don't have powers at all.
Wait, so this will become the 1800s version of the A-Team?
That's right.
Yeah, every episode there's a montage where they're retrofitting the ship for whatever mission
for battle.
That happens in the last 15 minutes when they're dealing with the big boss.
Oh God, I love the A-Team. Let's see here. We lost track of thought there. What we were gonna do.
That was it. That was Kevin's idea.
You can see outro. Yeah.
Kevin, thank you so much for writing in, and thank you everyone who wrote into us over the course of the season. Thank you so much for subscribing. We really appreciate it. There's a lot of really great emails that we can't get to, but you can see all of those in their entirety on our website, shatontv.com. Click on the River Rants section. Guys, we got a lot of fantastic emails saying that they followed us from Westworld, or they just found us, but now they're going back to Westworld and they're going to follow along with us on our next venture, which will be American Gods. So thank you so much for that. We really appreciate it. Doing this podcast, Big D and I, we started months ago, back in August of last year, and it's really surpassed all of our hopes and expectations. So really appreciate everyone who's part of Shat Nation and part of us. Even if you didn't like Taboo, I know there's a couple listeners who just listen to the podcast and don't watch the show. So big shout outs to you guys for that. Is there anything you guys want to say before we shut down and get ready for American Gods and the Westworld Telegraph?
Yeah, just one thing. I hate to do it, but if you are going to buy anything on Amazon, which we all do, and you want to help out the podcast on both Shat the Movies and Shat on TV, on the top, you'll see a link called Shop Amazon, and that is just an Amazon affiliate link that will take you to Amazon's normal store, but us as Shat on Podcast, we get a tiny little slice of whatever you purchase during that session. It doesn't cost you anything extra. It doesn't... It's no skin off your back, but those little pennies, quarters, dollars help us keep the lights on, because besides the hours and hours that we dedicate to it, there is a financial cost to it, and we don't do it for the money, but any little bit that we don't have to take out of pocket helps, and we appreciate anything that you could do for us.
Also, I wanted to say thanks to everybody listening for, whether the show is good or bad or somewhere in the middle, you make it worthwhile in the sense that I know that after a bad episode, we can all get together and talk about it and read the emails about it. The inside jokes that have developed, people calling us, SOTV now, and having, especially the regulars who we interact with on a regular basis, and a lot of love in that community is really great. So I really appreciate it. But thanks I know that someday we're going to pick a show that is an absolute piece of crap, and you're going to be there to lift our spirits after every episode.
Yeah, and I just want to thank everybody. What makes the difference to me is when I get that, whether it's a tweet, an email, a comment on YouTube, where somebody's telling us how they've incorporated us into their day. Whether someone's sitting on a train, going on their commute to work, or it's a weekend and they said, thank God it's here, I've been hitting refresh. You don't know how much that means to us, that you've chosen to have us in your phone, in your radio, wherever it is, and share that time with us. It means a lot. And in the end, that's why we do it. So thank you very much for letting us into your head. I don't know if it was the wisest of moves, but we like being in there.
Yeah, and part of I think part of our goal here and our mission statement at Shat on Entertainment is to have that type of interaction with our audience, and we're here for you, right? So if you have any thoughts or suggestions on how to make the show better, our email address is shatontv, our hosts at shatontv.com. We love receiving that, and you can follow us on Twitter. That concludes Season 1 of Taboo FX, guys. However, like I said, we will be continuing on with American Gods, which debuts April 30th on Starz, as well as we do a monthly Westworld Telegraph, which is our fan email read and response, so very similar to River Rants. We do that on the first Monday of every month. Is that correct, Gene?
That's right.
All right, so we're going to record a new Westworld Telegraph this weekend and get that out. If you have any thoughts on Westworld that you want us to know about, or you have any interesting news or your thoughts on Season 1 or where Season 2 is going, email us again, hosts at shatontv.com. We thank you for following us on social media. Please share with a friend. We're everywhere, including Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram. That address is at shatontv. You can also search for us on Facebook. Our website, again, is shatontv.com. We're everywhere fine podcasts can be found, including iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to all of our podcasts. And if you stop by iTunes, please leave a 5-star review. That really helps the podcast grow. Again, you can continue to check our store for cool merchandise that we'll put up. And finally, if you really liked us on Shat on TV, check out our sister podcast, Shat the Movies, where we review the best 80s and 90s movies from our childhood that you, the audience, vote for. So you can check out all that information over at shatthemovies.com. We just did Pulp Fiction, which was our first perfect score ever, and it was my favorite episode that we've done. In fact, I think, Big D, you mentioned before we started, it was the most downloaded episode.
We had a good day.
Yeah, so if you like 80s and 90s movies, or you like the fact that you could make us possibly watch a terrible movie, go to shatthemovies.com and vote on those movies. We do weeks in advance, so it gives you time to watch those movies. Also, a shout out to the other Taboo podcasts. I know the AfterBuzz, and then Brian and Ashley over there at Talking Taboo. It's a big independent podcast community. We all do this out of the labor of love. So shout outs to them. If you want more Taboo stuff, check out their podcast as well. On behalf of my co-hosts, Big D, Dick Ebert, and Gene Lyons, I'm Roger Roper. Be sure to join us next season, if there is a next season. We'll be doing that, but join us over at American Gods, Westworld, Shat the Movies, and possibly, if you want us to do it, maybe Game of Thrones.
You know nothing, Roger Roper.
Take care. Good night. Good luck.
Topical.